cops who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared and said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel-Air." I begged and pleaded with her day after day, but she packed my suitcase and sent me on my way. She gave me a kiss and then she gave me my ticket. I put my Walkman on and said I might as well kick it. First class, yo, this is bad. Drinking orange juice out of a champagne glass. Is this what the people of Bel-Air living like? This might be alright.
We're finally here, performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together, you wanna clap as we take you through this monkey rap. DJ Monkey, he's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. His coconut gun can fire its earth. If he shoots ya, it's gonna hurt. He's bigger, faster, and stronger too. He's the first member of the DK crew. DK Monkey,
Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ate the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead. Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Fed to the rules and I hit the ground running. Didn't understand something like that. Your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb. So much to do, so much to say. So what's wrong with taking the back straight stop? You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't go.
I'm a sick fuck, I like a quick fuck. I'm a sick fuck, I like a quick fuck. I'm a sick fuck, I like a quick fuck. I'm a sick fuck, I like a quick fuck. I'm a sick fuck, I like a quick fuck. I like my dick suck. I buy you a sick truck. I buy you some new ticks. I get you that nip tuck. How you start a family, the condom slipped up. I'm a sick fuck, I'm inappropriate. I like hearing stories, I like that hoe shit. I wanna hear more shit, I like the whole shit. Send me some more shit, you trifling hoe. Bitch. Such a fucking hoe.
Welcome to Recording in Progress, where we're taking a little time out of a busy weekend to slow it all down, slow that progress down so we can record it, and so we can all hopefully progress. In this special episode of Recording in Progress, we're going to explain how Disney doesn't know how Mafia works. With me today to help me through this journey to a magical place is Mr. Jim Jesus. How's it going, Jim?
You needed to say my real title. I'm offended that you didn't say my real title. I'm a level 100
cult leader.
Cult leader.
So
this is how Mafia works.
This is, in fact, how Mafia works. And we're going to start off with somebody we've talked a lot about who doesn't understand how Mafia works, Mr. Jussie Smollett. He's gotten 16 felony counts following his recent oopsie-doopsie in Chicago.
Yeah.
Empire actor Jussie Smollett was indicted Friday on 16 felony counts following his Chicago attack allegations. A spokesperson for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office did not immediately respond to Fox News' request for comment. A lawyer for Smollett did not immediately respond to Fox News' request for comment. Other than
really
oof.
Not a good look. Even
good.
your lawyer's like, no comment.
Following the news, Anthony Guglielmi, the chief communications officer of the Chicago Police Department, tweeted, as Supervisor Johnson stated, allegations against Mr. Smollett are shameful and have proven they're an affront to the people of Chicago, who embraced him as a neighbor and respected him as a role model. We stand behind the work of the detectives and refer any comments on indictments to prosecutors. Earlier this week, it was revealed that Chicago police opened an internal investigation in Smollett's case. In a statement to Fox News Thursday, a spokesman for the force confirmed an internal investigation had been opened. I'd like to point out that a lot of the information out there was inaccurate, and there were numerous agencies that were involved in the investigation. The statement continued, as standard procedure, when there are allegations of information being leaked, an internal investigation has been opened, and we're looking at our vulnerabilities. So first things first, I probably could never imagine saying this before. Good on Chicago police. Good on Chicago police for actually, saying, hey, maybe people shouldn't be leaking about a major criminal investigation. And this does not count his federal crimes.
I think this might be the only time that you'll ever applaud them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go back to their corruption in like 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. And this doesn't count at least 2 federal mail allegations So he's also got some federal pound me in the rear time. But of course, you know, he might like that. I don't know. Might be considered a vacation for him.
Yep. It reminds me of like a lot of those people in the Free State Project up in Keene, how they refer to the Keene police as like the Keene day spa or something like that.
Yeah,
and like a few of them are gay, and they're just like, "Oh, this is perfect."
But this is not a good deal for Jussie Smollett. And I think when I was watching a news clip about it earlier, they said multiple lies to police were each given their own particular indictment. And I think what happened is the state's attorney believes he needs to do jail time, so he's going to load up as much as he can on him. So no matter how he pleads down, he's going to spend some time in jail.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, he really deserves it after what happened.
Yeah.
I look forward to him.
It's bad for everybody, especially people who actually experience real hate crimes, because now every time a hate crime comes up, we're going to be like, X, where's my Xbox controller?
Where was my X? Press X to doubt.
Press an X to doubt. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, these things actually do happen, and people really do get hurt. Sometimes they get killed.
Yeah.
And he's just exploiting that to make his career more successful.
And that's not good. No. But, you know, he is not alone currently in being prosecuted right now in Chicago. R. Kelly has decided to invoke Murray Rothbard as... Okay, so for those of you who may not be part of Jim's normal audience base, Jim is active in libertarian circles, and Murray Rothbard was a noted libertarian philosopher who, at several points in time, talked about, it's philosophically ethical to sell children.
Yeah.
Which we all said, oof, that's not a good look.
Yeah, but his argument was more like, if there's families that want to adopt a child, it might be a good thing to allow people to sell their kids, because if they sell their kids to an adopting child, there's going to be like economic incentives for people to adopt over having actual kids, and there's going to be less orphanages, and it might be a good thing. And in that respect, it's sort of true, but I think he forgot about, there's deviants out there that might want to buy kids to rape them.
It's like, well, I love little children. I'm going to take them to my big house in Vietnam. Hey, kids, do you like shoes? Would you like to learn a trade? So, R. Kelly did an interview with Oprah's friend Gail, and he exploded with rage as he vehemently denied sexually abusing underage girls in a new interview Wednesday, and blamed their parents of the alleged victims for selling their daughters to him. The I Believe I Can Fly singer flew off the handle in his 80-minute sit-down with CBS Morning host Gayle King, prompting the cameras to stop rolling at one point. 30 years of my career, y'all trying to kill me, Kelly bellowed as he stood up, pounded his chest, and pointed directly at the camera. This is about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do that. Oh, by the way, his ex-wife or baby mama, I forgot which, is suing him over not paying his child support. You don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it. Just before the emotional outburst, Kelly burst into tears, and he insisted, I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my effing life.
By the way, I'm just going to say, Trapped in the Closet 2, when it comes out, it's going to be fucking lit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but Kelly insisted he was in a relationship with the women, Joycelyn Savage and Azriel Clary. What kind of love is it that keeps these young women away from their families, asking, what kind of father, what kind of mother would sell their daughter to a man, he countered. So, when you're being accused of allegedly running a sex cult,
and kidnapping and sex
and kidnapping people, you should not say things like that.
Yeah.
Even though he did back that down, he said, so you're saying the parents handed their daughters, Ezra and Jocelyn, to you, King asked. Is that what you're saying? And he said, absolutely. So I think he could argue later that he was only metaphorically saying that he was purchasing young women.
Oh, no.
But R. Kelly is also not a man who knows how mafia works.
It'd be like Richard Spector going on going to the press and going like, That bitch had it coming, but I didn't do it.
And so we got a little bit of a sad news story. Not laughing at somebody who has been a figure of public scorn for a while, who's finally getting their public comeuppance. Mike Smith of Trailer Park Boys accused of sexual assault. A Vice News allegation found a woman reported Smith to the police in 2005. Smith denies the allegations and no charges were filed. Mike Smith, who plays Bubbles on the show Trailer Park Boys, was accused in 2005 of sexually assaulting a teenager. A woman alleges that in 2005, when she was 18 and out with her friends in downtown Halifax, she met Smith, then 32, at a bar. She says that after she showed Smith her fake ID, he bought drinks for her and her friends, who were allegedly 18 and under the legal drinking age of 19. That seems kind of weird for like Canada. That's kind of a weird. 19's a weird drinking age.
Yeah.
She later told.
I think they want people to be at least a year out of high school, at least taste life for a year before they let them drink.
No, once you taste life for a day, you need to drink. He bought drinks for her and her friends who were 18 and under the legal drinking age of 19. She later told police Smith sexually assaulted her at his home. Police interviewed Smith, but did not press charges. The woman declined to go forward with her complaint after a police officer told her fingers could be pointed at her for being in a bar underage. Which, that's not really a good way to do your police investigation. Although, I personally think if, you have an ID that's good enough to sneak into a bar, you really shouldn't be able to argue that, oh no, I was underage and he should have known. Well, you had an ID that looked good.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's going on with the guy from Defense Distributed, Corey.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they were like, well, you had sex with a minor. It's like, well, she had an ID. She showed me this ID that said that she was over 18. So, no.
So, Vice News unearthed the complaint as part of a month-long investigation into Smith's behavior towards women at bars Smith co-owns in Halifax, which have been frequently cited for liquor infractions. So that's a big oof right there. Yeah. Including women found passed out in bathroom stalls and alcohol being served to minors. That's a big no-no. Last year, 3 women came forward in the media alleging that they believe they have been drugged at one of Smith's bars. Smith was not alleged to have been involved in any of these incidents, other than the fact that apparently he doesn't know how to manage a bar. Because, and I'm not going to say this to be flippant, but if your bartender's letting people get raped in the toilet, he's definitely letting your drinks get all watered down, or he's definitely overpouring on you.
So in real life, Bubbles isn't like Bubbles. Bubbles is more like Julian.
Yeah. But Smith has been a topic of discussion in the city's cultural scene. Questions rolled around an alleged case of assault in Los Angeles. Smith was charged in 2016 with domestic battery after witnesses said they saw the actor choke a woman in a hotel bathroom. The next day, Smith and the woman put out a joint statement saying that the heated argument had been misconstrued. The woman said that she did not feel she was in danger, and the charge was ultimately dropped. Witnesses interviewed by Vice News, however, stand by their accounts of what they say was a violent assault. Responding to the 2005 allegations, Smith's manager, Louis Thomas, sent the following statement. The Halifax police investigated the complaint 14 years ago. Mike voluntarily submitted to an interview and answered every question he was asked about his contact with this woman. Police did not seek any further information from him. They did not lay charges. It would be reckless and unfair to publish the allegations so many years later when no police action was taken contemporaneously. We reserve our right to take all legal action against you and anybody who publishes this allegation. And I think that's a fair statement. I mean, yes, the police were kind of sketchy in how they handled the case, but,
it's Canada.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Trailer Park Boys?
I never really have, no.
Do you think that maybe Ricky was there to talk the police out of charging him?
So yeah, let's see here. Let me scroll up here with explaining that the first season of Trailer Park Boys started shooting 20 years ago this year. Wow. It's a charming faux docuseries that follows good-natured ne'er-do-wells living in a Nova Scotia trailer park. Ricky and Julian are petty criminals who grow and sell weed and commit break-and-enters and other schemes. Traditionally, each season opens with the boys getting out of jails and wraps as they return to prison.
Mm-hmm.
And Bubbles is their gentle friend who cares for cats. He lives in a shed where his parents abandoned him, surrounded by shopping carts that he steals and sells back to the stores that they came from.
Yeah.
That sounds almost Mayberry-esque.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's that local, probably retarded kid who's stealing things and selling them back to us.
But
because
he's not
his parents aren't
retarded.
taking care of it.
He's just an extreme underachiever. He's actually the smartest guy in the whole trailer park.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it's one of Canada's most successful TV shows.
Yeah. Well,
Huh,
how
weird.
many TV shows have you watched that came from out of Canada?
Well, SCTV, for one. Little Mosque on the Prairie, I actually watched bits and pieces of.
But how many of those asked to get like brought back?
All of them, actually.
I mean, and then actually do get brought back.
Yeah, all of those did.
What? Oh, they did? SCTV
yeah.
they got brought back?
Yeah.
Oh.
It did a couple of seasons. It was
But I
an
remember
attempt
when
to...
Trailer Park came back, everybody was losing their shit, their collective
Yeah.
shit. I did not see that for anything else.
Yeah, because it popped onto Netflix.
Yeah.
Apparently, Jimmy Kimmel and Snoop Dogg were fans of it, and yeah, little marijuana cultural thing there.
By the way, interesting story. I may have had a friend who knew about DSS hacking. I'm definitely not saying that it was me, even though the statute of limitations is far over now. Who might have had a television with illegal satellite cable satellite TV on it, and a certain show may have popped up when certain people were flipping the channels, and we just happened to see a big image of Bubbles' face, and we were like, "What the hell is this?" Let's continue watching it. But this is just a theoretical thing. This didn't actually happen. But that may have how I found out about the show, and it was like on the second season. Like it was still fresh.
Yeah,
And it became like kind of a cult thing with our friends, and then everybody found out about it. It was our little thing.
normies ruined everything again.
It wasn't ruined. All those movies and other extra seasons turned out to be great. I think the only season I could say that was like a little bit of a slog was the first season when they were still trying to figure out the show. But even still, that show that season was great.
Yeah. So, Jeopardy host Alex Trebek has been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer is one of those cancers that survivability rate's not really good.
Yeah.
In a statement posted on YouTube, he noted his policy of always being transparent with fans of the show and always wanting to hear news from him first before inaccurate information was revealed publicly. Hi, everyone. I have some news to share with all of you in keeping with my longtime policy of being open and transparent with our Jeopardy fan base. Trebek said, directly speaking to the camera, I also want to prevent you from reading or hearing some overblown or inaccurate reporting regarding my health. So therefore, I wanted to pass along this information. That paragraph before where you described and basically said everything that Alex Trebek said, you didn't need to have that article. We should have just had what Alex Trebek said because that would be more meaningful to us emotionally. Now, just like 50,000 other people in the United States each year, this week I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now, normally this prognosis for this is not very encouraging, but I'm going to fight this. I'm going to keep working. And with the love and support of my family and friends, and with the help of your prayers, I plan to beat the low survival rate statistics for this disease. Truth told, I have to, because under the terms of my contract, I have to host Jeopardy for 3 more years. So help me keep the faith and we'll win. We'll get it done. Thank you.
Now, from what I recall, in every contract that I've ever been assigned to, where it says like, "Hey, you have to work for us for X amount of years," which I don't think is legally binding in my industry, but either way, there usually is things saying like, "Oh, don't worry, if you're gonna die from the cancers, we'll be nice enough to be like, no."
So, stage 4 cancer. How bad is that, Jim?
I don't know. I imagine it's the worst one.
Let's put a little Google in there.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I
stage
work in
4
medical, but I'm not a
cancer.
doctor,
Is stage 4 always terminal? Stage 4, that's for mesothelioma. So So let's look here. How long? According to the National Cancer Institute, an estimated 27% of people in the United States live at least 5 years after being diagnosed with stage 4. Well, that's for breast cancer. Let's go stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Let's hear how bad it is. The 5-year survival rate is only 3%.
Oh.
So that's not good for Alex Trebek.
No,
so
that's not good.
Other than Celebrity Jeopardy, what's your cultural connection to Jeopardy and Mr. Alex Trebek?
I watch the show occasionally, not often. And every time I do watch a show, I'm like fairly decent at it. Not enough to good enough to go on it, but I end up like answering a lot of questions.
I have tried to get on, but that and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and other shows like that, it's always very difficult to get on those shows, especially when you're not in California.
It'd be easy for me to get on America's Got Talent, though, or whatever, American Idol, or whatever.
So could you do a bad talent presentation, bad enough? Say, hey, listen, I'm going to do a terrible performance, but can you make sure I actually get on?
No, I'd just genuinely just try to do something that's way out of my league. I mean, I can sort of sing. I mean, I'm not terrible. I'm not great to have like a music career or anything. And I'm definitely not good enough to have, play the guitar or anything like that professionally.
What's that weird band that you mentioned the other day whose name's completely escaping me?
I don't know. A lot of bands.
That weird experimental band that's been like hugely influential on all sorts of things, and like nobody knows their members.
Oh, the Residents.
Yeah, so you'd probably try to do a Residents song for your American Idol thing.
Yeah, these are the guys. They're usually God damn you. I hate Google image search because I'll be like, hey, show me images of whatever, and they're like, here's all these beautiful images, which one would you like to see? And you're like, this one, and they're like, oh, by the way, that's not a thumbnail, that's actually how big the picture is. It's only 200 by 200. It's like, no, just give me a good size picture of the fucking Residents. God damn you. Now before we get into our next story, I think we should talk about something that's not on this list. At least I didn't see it. We should talk about Keith.
Keith?
Our boy Keith Flint.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you talk about Keith Flint?
Yeah, Keith Flint. Rest in peace, Keith Flint. Only shooting stars break the mold. I don't know. I just have this obsession with Internet News Desk, who always like posts like fake or like botched obituaries. So yeah, that's obviously the lead singer of Everclear, and Only Shooting Stars Break the Mold came from Smash Mouth, but this is the lead vocalist of Prodigy, a little band you may have heard of in the '90s, because we're gonna get into the '90s here soon. So I think that's worth touching on. Yeah,
and
Smack
also
My Bitch Up, the classic feminist anthem, "Smack My Bitch Up."
It actually is if you watch the music video, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Because the whole music video, you think it's just some drunk dude at a bar. No, it's a drunk chick.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with.
Have you seen the one, the parody one, where it's like a cat?
Yes.
Going out of the town and getting wrecked. Yeah. So rest
just being a normal cat.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with a little bit of '90s sadness. Luke Perry died on Wednesday.
Well, we already started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 52-year-old actor who starred in Beverly Hills 90210 suffered a massive stroke on Wednesday and was in the hospital. I'm actually kind of shocked that Luke Perry was only about 10 years older than me. He feels like he should be older. Perry was starring as Fred Andrews on the CW series Riverdale, so Archie's going to be dadless, which is going to further twist Riverdale into a distorted former shape of itself. In a statement, Perry's publicist, actor Luke Perry, 52, passed away today after suffering a massive stroke. He was surrounded by his children, Jack and Sophie, fiancée Wendy Madison Bauer, ex-wife Minnie Sharp, mother Annette Ann Bennett, stepfather Steve Bennett, brother Tom Perry, sister, blah, 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 blah. And he was not even the oldest member of the 90210's cast.
Here's the thing. Like, I remember when this show came out, my older sister was in high school. Like, I think she was a senior or the junior and seniors by the time that show was coming on. So she would have been roughly the same age as those characters in real life at that time. But they all seem to be 10 years older than her.
But the girl who played, but the girl who played the nerdy library girl who was Brandon Walsh's first girlfriend, she's actually 58. So that's Gabrielle Carteris. So if you want to pull up that image, so she was actually 6 years older than Luke Perry. And I forgot which cartoon from the 90s. I think.
Yeah, I remember seeing her in the show.
I think it was Animaniacs.
Going like,
it was
wow,
Animaniacs. Animaniacs made a joke about her being a secret grandma. You know, they made a joke that Luke Perry was old. It's like, no, really, she's actually the old one.
She looks like the youngest, but I remember when the show was on, I remember going like, wow, she looks old though. And I never understood Tori Spelling, by the way.
Well, you know, when your dad is making a TV show, you get to be a star. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's just how that all works. Now, somebody who recently got a little bit of nostalgia bombing recently, Jan Michael Vincent, formerly of Airwolf, died. Jan Michael Vincent, the star of Airwolf and the Winds of War, dies at 74.
Holy shit.
Yeah, like, I didn't even realize he was that old. U.S. actor, appeared with Charles Bronson in The Mechanic with Burt Reynolds and Hooper and the seminal surfing film Big Wednesday. He was nominated for a Golden Globe for the 1971 film Going Home and again in 1984 for the miniseries Winds of War. Vince died on 10th February, according to his death certificate. That's kind of interesting how they didn't reveal he died until months later. The document was only obtained by the media on Friday, states that he was an inpatient at a hospital in North Carolina and is survived by his third wife and blah, 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 blah. And we all mostly remember him for Airwolf, which was like a weird show, and they made like 2 shows about helicopter police in the 80s. And I never really understood that. Like, it's like, okay, we're going to make Knight Rider, but instead of a sentient computer car, it's just going to be 2 dudes in a helicopter. And hey, one of those guys is going to be Ernest Borgnine. I don't understand why Airwolf happened. I remember it being cool and being like must-see TV when I was a kid. But it was just weird.
It sounds weird. I don't think I've ever seen this show, so.
Yeah, it was actually recently referenced on Rick and Morty. In one of their little bits on Intergalactic TV.
Oh.
And
that's another show I never completely watched the last season of because I was just like, okay, I'm bored of this show now.
Yeah.
The Pickle Rick, after Pickle Rick, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah. So with election 2020 coming up, somebody has decided she is going to get political. Taylor Swift has announced she's going to be.
Thank God.
I know, right?
I was really hoping that she would speak more on politics.
Yeah. I'm finding my voice in terms of politics, Swift writes. It took a lot of time educating myself in the political system and the branches of government that are signing off on bills that affect our day-to-day life. I saw so many issues that put our most vulnerable citizens at risk, and I felt like I had to speak up to try to help make a change. So she's 30. Mm-hmm. How do you, only 30, just, have an opinion about politics? That's not something I personally understand.
I don't know. How long has she been in the music industry? Pretty much since she was a young
like
teenager.
14, 15, 16 or something.
So she's probably been completely divorced about what was going on in the world. She was just too busy writing music and making.
No, she doesn't write. She doesn't write music.
Oh, well, singing other people's music that they wrote and then.
Well, I mean, she sort of sings it and then they process it through autotune.
Oh well. I'm sure that when they were doing all that stuff for her, she was stacking mad stacks. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Counting her stacks of money.
4chan in the 2018 elections believed that she was secretly a red hat. But she ended up endorsing 2 Democrats in Tennessee. Phil Bredesen, who is like an old school Clinton Democrat who tried to get elected senator, and Jim Cooper, who was running for the House of Representatives. And a lot of her conservative redneck Tennessee fans were less than thrilled. And
who'd have thunk it?
Now she approaches her milestone birthday. Swift says she feels informed enough to speak about politics to my 114 million followers. Invoking racism and promoting fear through thinly veiled messaging is not what I want from our leaders, she writes. I'm going to do more to help. We have big races coming up next year. So we get to hear Taylor Swift help us understand how our country should work. And I think it's about time. So we're going to dive into a different level of politics. Eurogamer magazine whinges woefully about Dead or Alive 6's sexy chicks and Donald Trump. Because there's been a whole lot of controversy in video games. There hasn't really been a good story to do a deep dive on that, but American and some European voices have been trying to pressure Japan to neuter their stuff, and some Japanese creators have been responding in kind. Yoi Shimbori, who works for the Team Ninja video games, was being interviewed by Eurogamer and Wesley Yin Poole, whoever that is. At reveal, we are told that the heavily sexualized female characters of old had been ditched in favor of a more realistic-looking, in line with heavy-hitting fighting series stars such as Kasumi were shown wearing an outfit that covered her up and looked a bit like something a modern-day ninja would wear to battle. You know, it was an outfit that made sense. The game itself, though, betrays this marketing spiel, exposing it for the lip service it always was. By default, the female character's breasts bounce around like balloons tied to strings. You can turn this off in the settings. The skimpiest outfits, some of which are nothing more than a pair of knickers and a bra, must be unlocked via playing the game, and Team Ninja has stuck with the icky camera-free roam for victory poses. Make no mistake, Dead or Alive 6 is Dead or Alive, warts and all. I mean, how dare people, in their own free time, enjoy sexy 2D animated Japanese girls? I mean, isn't it hashtag current year, Jim?
Yep.
After a while, Shimbori relayed that Koei Tecmo wanted him to sell the game to the fans, you know, the people who actually buy the game for $60 on launch day. So Shimbori basically told journalists to get bent and began focusing more on the sexy time, which is what led to the infamous core values moment at EVO Japan. And that resulted in the stream getting cut off by EVO organizer Joey Mr. Wizard Keller. Trying to get people to actually buy the game was seen as some sort of backstabbing tactic by the game's media, even though no one in their right mind would buy a Dead or Alive game without the sex appeal. Heck, even with the barely serviceable sex appeal that there is, the numbers of the game are looking pretty pathetic in the Steam charts or anything to go by. So, what do you think?
I think I'm going to get hate mail from Prox in a bit saying, why are we bashing his game?
But what do you think about privileged white people from European countries telling Japanese people how to make their cultural art? Doesn't that feel problematic to you, Jim?
I'm looking at the banner ad for this thing, which keeps showing me mouse pads of with hand rests that are boobs and butts.
Well, I mean this website is this website is, you know, pretty clear on where it comes from.
Okay. And
its ads are, you know, oriented accordingly. And see, you could also get a mouse pad with, you know, behind.
Is that a bunch of Overwatch butts?
No, that's multiple different games. One was from Overwatch. The other is like Necro Automata, I believe it is.
Oh, there was like a poster of just a bunch of butts.
I think so. So we're going to be pressing F to respects in a different way here, because Anthem is not rolling out real good. And this may be the final nail in the coffin of BioWare, as EA does what EA does, slowly consuming game studios of all their intellectual integrity and capital, and then just consuming them for their capital. Anthem PlayStation
mediocre versions of them.
Yeah. Anthem PlayStation 4 crash fix is coming. No consoles were bricked. The fix is coming next week to Anthem after a thorough review from BioWare of a bug which caused PlayStation 4 consoles to crash, according to the head of live services, Chad Robertson. We've identified several causes for the temporary power down crash some PS users experienced. temporary power down. So your game turns off people's game consoles. Robertson wrote in a tweet on Wednesday, fixes for the top issues are in the patch next week. If you encounter a game crash where your PS4 console won't respond, you can manually power down and restart it. No risk of damage. That doesn't sound good to me.
No.
Because, I mean,
have
the
to be assured, like, hey, if you're playing our video game and something happens, you can go ahead and restart your console. It's not going to completely brick your thing. Wait, hold on. Who said anything about bricking?
Publisher Electronic Arts began collecting information from users on Monday to help identify the root console. The cause of the console crash is many users reported having to unplug their console and plug it back in to get their PlayStation 4 to power back on. In BioWare's follow-up review, it found that no PlayStation 4 consoles were bricked due to the Anthem crash issue. A brick console means that the system is no longer playable, essentially rendering it an expensive brick. Though some people have claimed otherwise on the internet. That's still not good. Having to hard reboot your console while you're playing a game. That's kind of the opposite of why you get a video game.
Yeah, that's the opposite of why you get a console, because you don't want to deal with all the hassle that comes with PC gaming. Even though it's clearly superior, PC master race, rise up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do love me some Nintendo, and one of the things I like about Nintendo is that I can just pop in a game and play it and not have to worry about, my whole thing.
Reverse compatibility or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, China is trying to make a big move in the film world. China aims to become a strong film power like the U.S.
By the way, if you want to donate, that's how you delete cat. Please donate to delete cat. Carry on.
China aims to become a strong film power like the U.S. by 2035, calls for more patriotic films. The Chinese government has exhorted filmmakers to turn the country into a strong film power like the U.S. by 2035 and has called for the production of more than 100 movies a year. Each earn more than $15 million as part of a push to increase China's soft power. So we have in our developed studio systems, basically each major studio develops like 10 films a year and they compete with each other. So if China is going to be dumping out 100 films, I'm just saying, unless they start buying some more studios and building some more, since China does own, I think it's AMC is owned by a Chinese company. So either AMC better start showing some Chinese movies, or China's going to be coming to Netflix or Amazon. That's the only way they're going to distribute these films and generate soft power. And the Chinese film industry complains that their ability to tell stories lags far behind Hollywood and Bollywood's ability to do so. And actually, there's a pretty interesting science fiction movie going on from China that's in some limited distribution in the United States. I actually would see it if there was one showing, in Florida. It's a sci-fi movie about the world's going to end, so China and the rest of the countries decide to put giant rockets on the side of planet Earth and move Earth. And it's all about the plucky heroes who have to survive in that scenario. It is based off of a popular Chinese novel series. So do you think China can start making 100 movies, of which maybe 2 or 3 are good and 97 or so are mediocre, and we'll be watching them on Amazon, laughing at them?
I don't think I've seen a proper Chinese film since Crouching Tiger. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That was a good movie.
That was a good movie. It had great vistas.
It did have great vistas. And Warner Brothers CEO is having a Me Too problem. Ken Sugihara had an inappropriate relationship with actress Charlotte Kirk and partners Brett Ratner and James Packer. So, for those of you who don't know, allegedly, Brett Ratner kind of sort of has had a little gay rape problem. And Warner Brothers kind of sort of covered up for him, and now it turns out he had a improper relationship with a young actress who is associated with him and a Australian billionaire. or something that can make a really good movie if it wasn't making fun of a Hollywood studio boss.
I have a serious question though. Like, how come every time there's some sort of sexual allegation thing going on, they always show a picture of the person making this face?
Yeah, that's kind of weird to me too.
Yeah. It's always this. It's. Yeah. Anyways, carry on.
So I have the opportunity of a lifetime for you. Packer, the Australian billionaire, wrote in a text message reviewed by The Hollywood Reporter, "Come to the Hotel Bel Air now. You will never be able to pay me." He promised an introduction to the most important man you can meet, to the actress. And Packer did not identify the man by name, but based on hundreds of texts, emails, and draft settlements agreements obtained and reviewed by The Hollywood Reporter, the late-night introduction was to Warner Brothers chairman and CEO Ken Sujihara. The communication and subsequent encounters between Kirk and Sujihara drew the powerful studio chief into what Kirk repeatedly referred to as a sexual relationship, and from there the relationship devolved into a protracted and increasingly desperate struggle among Sujihara, Ratner, and Packer to manage Kirk's urgent demands to be cast in movies and TV series. At one point, Ratner accused Kirk of attempted extortion. It's so weird. Having a young lady meet a studio boss for sex, it's like, she expects to get made into a movie star. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
I'm sure it's all a coincidence.
I mean, it's only been a thing in Hollywood since the 30s. According to the text messages, Sujihara said he would arrange for Kirk to meet with studio executives on the Warner Brothers films and TV products, a highly unorthodox effort for a chairman of a studio. On March 3rd, 2015, a frustrated Kirk texted him to say, "You're very busy, I know, but when we were in front of the motel having sex, you said you would help me, and when you just ignore me like you're doing now, it makes me feel used. Are you going to help me like you said you would?" Sujihara responded, "Sorry you feel that way. Richard will be reaching out to you tonight." Other texts make clear that the reference was to Richard Brenner, the president of production at Warner's New Line label. There's no indication that Brenner was aware of any relationship between Kirk and Sujihara. Brenner, through a Warner Media rep, declined comment. And she was cast in some small roles and things, but yeah. So why would you meet with a business partner of somebody who's been dodging rape cases to have sex with a girl? That doesn't seem like a really smart move. That seems like a bad decision. But of course, he was also the person who pushed Justice League to come out so it didn't affect his bonus pay. So,
and what a wonderful film that turned out to be.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe Kirk was not making good decisions.
Yeah.
So there's been a popular rumor going around that Marvel Comics is going to go the way of the dodo and Disney is going to outsource them. Because Disney has had a certain comic book company named IDW produce licensed comics for...
I have to ask, what is with all that spoon and the... Are you trying to hypnotize me like in Get Out?
I was just fidgeting with something with my hand. It was not a hypnosis spoon.
Okay.
So IDW Media was the learned the chairman and controlling stockholder Howard Jones would replace departing Kerry McCluggage, CEO of IDW Holdings. McCluggage held that role since last July when he was replaced by Ted Adams, as Adams left for sabbatical back in December. Chris Ryall returned to IDW Publishing to take over the triple role of editor-in-chief, publisher, and president, replacing Greg Goldstein, who had taken on the role of publisher in November 2018 after Ted Adams stepped down from the role. Ryall had previously left IDW back in March and in April joined Skybound Entertainment. Meanwhile, Vice Chairman of the board, Stephen Brown, has been charged by the New York Attorney General as part of a frauds case against Cardis, a credit card payments company. So IDW is having some problems. Numbers are doing okay-ish. Like, more comics are selling good enough to justify their existence, but not good enough to make a super-duper a lot of money, which is worse.
Are people buying digital?
Marvel and DC both claim that they are, but you have to trust them because that's numbers that they have that are totally super secret and proprietary.
Oh.
Though a lot of people I know who are knowledgeable in the industry say there's really not a good digital format for Western comics. Now, in Japan, they have a great format for comics called, hey, do you want to see your favorite manga on digital? You can see it on the day it comes out for free. And if you want to see it later, you just pay for a subscription service. And you have the right to access anything you've downloaded.
That's never going to happen in the United States.
Yeah. These big companies are not making some of the best decisions.
Yeah, the way that intellectual property works in Japan is really interesting. Like, on one hand, they used to allow for... There used to be, like... You could rent albums in Japan. And when you went there to rent an album, they would give you a cassette tape. Like, they would sell you cassette tapes.
Yeah, it's like wink, wink.
Yeah. But if you copied software, they would, like, hang you from the highest building.
It's like pachinko machines. Do you understand what pachinko machines are?
No.
It's a little machine. You play with ball bearings, and the goal is, you buy some ball bearings, you put it in, and you get a bigger bucket of ball bearings. Seems harmless enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to stress that gambling is illegal in Japan.
Yeah.
Now, you can go to a store across the street and trade those ball bearings in for prizes and cash, usually cash.
Ah.
But again, gambling is illegal in Japan. We've just created gambling with extra steps.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't sell used women's undergarments in Japan because that's a violation of a UN treaty, having employees sell that. But you know what? We can have vending machines sell it.
Ah.
Laws in the United States are a little bit more creative. So, are you ready to get gay, Jim?
I'm gonna pass on that. I did some test today. Someone that's passing around this homosexuality test. I don't know if you've seen this. It's kind of like one of those political questions, but the questions were pretty straightforward. It was always like have you ever had sex with a man? Have you ever fantasized about having sex with a man? And then also asking the same question about women and then trans people. And then it puts you on like a little political index compass where the libertarian sphere is heterosexual, and then like the authoritarian is bisexual, and the communist section is what is it, homosexual, and then the anarchist communist section is asexual. And then I was
shouldn't the libertarian section be asexual?
Yes. They should just rotate that map just 90 degrees. There you go.
So a Marvel executive says the world is ready for a gay superhero in the MCU. So do you know why that statement is a liar, liar, pants on fire scenario?
Isn't there already a gay? Yeah, isn't Deadpool bisexual? In the comics, at least.
It's a little bit more complicated than that in the comics, but yes.
Okay.
So let's talk about some basics of reality. These movies don't make most of their money in the United States. They make most of their money in China.
Okay.
What do the people in China not like?
Gays.
You know where else they'll make some money? India. You know what they don't really like in India?
Oh, I bet it's the gays.
Yeah. So, Marvel executive says we're ready for a gay superhero in the MCU, and they have announced that for the Eternals, they are looking for a gay male lead. Victoria Alonso, the production chief for Marvel, told Variety that it's time for the MCU to feature a gay superhero. The world is ready. The world is ready, she said at the Captain Marvel premiere. Speculation surrounding a gay superhero within the MCU, and it's specifically its upcoming film, The Eternals, began after reports circulated that Marvel was looking to cast an openly gay man as the film's lead role. After Black Panther made history for being the first Marvel film with a black lead, and Captain Marvel making similar progressive moves by showcasing a female protagonist, increased LGBTQ representation in the MCU would signal a generational shift towards heightened diversity. So, Jim, do you know what the Eternals is?
No.
That's another reason why I think if they do this, this means that they are not confident that they can sell the Eternals on the broader Marvel movie brand. So, the Eternals is some stuff that Jack Kirby cooked up all about ancient aliens. We're going to be talking more about ancient aliens a little bit later in the show. But these are different ancient aliens. These are definitively godlike ancient aliens. And they showed up to Earth and other planets, and they genetically altered things and created evolution in different species. And if they liked how everything went, thumbs up, your planet wasn't destroyed. If they didn't, thumbs down, your planet got obliterated. And they made two races. The Eternals, that are basically the gods. And they also connect into the lore of Captain Marvel, as well as Thanos, who is a Eternal from the planet Titan. So there is some connective tissue for the Eternals in the MCU, but nobody knows who it is, except your hardcore comic nerd. So the new comic nerds who are going to be, yeah, gay, diversity, and inclusion, that's great. They haven't had a good selling Eternal series in years. They haven't seen one.
I haven't even heard of the Eternals.
Well, now you have.
Now I have. And the first time I'm being exposed to them, I'm also being exposed to a picture of Tom Green with a gun in his mouth.
Now, well, we're going to get to that link in just a moment. But the Eternals' arch nemesis race is called the Deviants. And they look like demons. So this is my kind of problem with bringing the Eternals to the silver screen. I am not sure in hashtag current year the MCU can make a movie where people who look weird and body dysmorphic are going to be the bad guy. Now that Twitter link, which does show Tom Green trying to kill himself, referenced a few other things. Marvel giving people movies that matter. Black Panther, Shang-Chi. So if you don't know what Shang-Chi is, imagine Bruce Lee, but he's a Marvel Comics superhero.
Oh, nice.
Who's not Bruce Lee. But he just does all the same things and most of the same iconic poses that Bruce Lee does, but enough that they can't be sued for intellectual copyright infringement.
So
to show
like
representation.
Feng Li? Was it Feng Li from Street Fighter?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Or Forest Law and Martial Law. From Tekken. Kind of like that. To show representation for the time. What's DC doing? Oh yeah, a new Batman, Aquaman, Joker movie. LOL. Even after Endgame, the MCU will still beat DC movies for a long time. So, what do you think? A Chinaman? A gay person? Do you think that's going to be the key for the future of Marvel movies?
Yeah.
My question then is, who's the Hispanic character? Because if, everybody's getting a ride on the we have to have a Hispanic character. Now, there are a couple of, iconic Marvel Hispanic characters, but none of them are really super duper popular.
By the way, there already was a black Marvel character that was on the big screen. I think the first one might have been Storm.
In
recent time, I'm sure there was some stuff.
Recently,
70s.
you have Blade, and you have the stuff from like the OG time frame. Though Blade actually in the comics wasn't that good. Blade in the comics was basically 70s blaxploitation. I kill vampires, and I'm black.
Okay.
And I'm a 70s black character. The comic book movie in the 90s did a lot of favors for Blade, the character. So now comes the opening little appetizer for the Captain Marvel controversy. And we're going to talk about something disgusting and gross that happened on Twitter. Now, for those of you who remember, Stan Lee died.
What?
Yes, he
Really?
died.
No, you're joking. This is trolling. You got me.
And Stan Lee, like a lot of dead famous celebrities, has somebody managing his Twitter feed to post positive things about their memory. And most people ignore those and say, oh, that's kind of cool. Except what happened now is Captain Marvel landed in Hollywood this past Monday for the movie's premiere. Read more about the evening below. So the website and the Twitter account for the real Stan Lee are owned by Pow. Let me read the exact name
Pow
here.
Entertainment.
Pow Entertainment, which were the business partners that Stan alleged before he passed away were stealing from him. So the people who are stealing from him have been roped into selling Captain Marvel
Oh,
to
wait.
Marvel fanboy audiences.
Midnight's Edge is here. We have to start over.
No, that was a
Let's go
joke.
back.
That
No, we have to go back. No, we can't. Too late now. Already have everything signed. We're doing it.
no.
Go play that. Go play that song again. No.
But no, anyway. So yeah, so a lot of people on Twitter have been kind of righteously angry about this sort of thing. And they've been asking Twitter, wait, why are you letting somebody use a blue check-marked Twitter account to sell products? So do you think it's gross and disgusting that they're using Stan Lee's corpse to sell a movie? I mean, admittedly, Stan was a bit of a huckster and a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that's kind of gross
Well, there
and
would have
disgusting?
to be kind of like a moratorium on that stuff. I mean, because I see people like bring out like, oh God, I can't even think of his name. We were just talking about it earlier. The Greatest Showman guy. Fuck. God damn it.
Oh, yeah, Hugh Jackman. Oh, you mean P.T. Barnum?
Yes. P.T. Barnum. Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, they drag out Hugh Jackman's corpse to sell Wolverine tickets. Oh wait, no, he's alive. Never mind.
I mean, he is alive, but I watched The Greatest Showman. It made me feel dead inside.
Yeah. Oh, the music. I thought everything was great except for the music. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I may be like 0.5% gay because I still do like musicals. I don't know what's going on with that.
Mm. Yeah. But also weird about the upsell for Captain Marvel. Do you like shoes, Jim?
No, I'm a barefoot kind of guy.
You're a barefoot kind of guy?
Yeah.
Well, Captain Marvel Adidas sneakers will send you higher, further, faster.
Oh, they're PF Flyers?
No, they're not.
Oh.
After breaking ground as Marvel's first female lead superhero movie, Captain Marvel is poised to literally leave her footprint on the world with her own Adidas sneakers. This pair of shoes was unveiled on Twitter by comic book artist Jen Bartel. She was designing the sneakers as part of a collaboration to celebrate the film's opening on Friday, which is also International Women's Day. The Carol Danvers-inspired shoes have cosmic aesthetic to it. The shoes clearly depicting the star-laden reaches of the galaxy while maintaining character's core red, blue, and yellow coloration. The shoes also boast the Hala star. And if you scroll down, there's a little video of it, but what Marvel has been doing is they have been working on corporate licensing as the new profit margin. It was last year during the football season, I believe, where the New York Jets got the license right for The Incredible Hulk. So we talked about the rumor that Marvel Comics is going to die. But the real profit is for Marvel Comics now. Whenever there's a movie,
Those shoes
we're
look
gonna
horrible, by the way.
They do look horrible. Whenever there's a new movie now or a new promotion, they're going to release products and licenses connected to it and try to use Adidas and other clothing and other merchandisers to push people in to see the movies and products.
I wouldn't mind having some Iron Man kicks if they were like made out of metal.
Yeah, but I'm not sure metal shoes are good for you.
Well, they could be metal coated.
But this is the beginning of the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel Comics.
Whatever happened to T-shirts? Remember when companies be like, "Hey, there's a new movie coming out. You want to buy a T-shirt?"
Yeah.
Do they still do that? Is that a still thing? I don't know.
They
I'm
do.
old. I don't go outside.
They do T-shirts, but that's not hot for the new kids.
Oh.
Apparently, wearing corporately branded sneakers is the new hot way to express your individualism.
Oh no.
That's the sort of 90s spirit that Kurt Cobain died for. And, of course, Rotten Tomatoes killed the want-to-watch score for Captain Marvel. So what happened? 55,000 people posted on there, or excuse me, at the high point, 58,931. So to put that into comparison, 52,966 people rated Avengers Infinity War over the total run of the series. and Marvel and Rotten Tomatoes previously culled that down by 50,000, and it's now back to around 10,000, putting the numbers for Captain Marvel at 34% fan score. What do you think? What should Marvel of Disney and Rotten Tomatoes expected to happen when you told people, well, you can't post your thoughts before the movie comes out? The only reason I personally rated Captain Marvel on Rotten Tomatoes is because they told me I couldn't rate it earlier. I wasn't going to leave a want to see rating on it, but when they told me I couldn't, I was going to give it a rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
I was tempted to do it, but I was like, I haven't seen the movie. That's not fair. I haven't seen the movie yet. You have. I have not.
I have. Yeah. And
we're going to talk about that later.
However, Rotten Tomatoes is claiming that, oh no, this is not a mass wave. This is just a glitch, you guys. Just like what happened with EA. It's nobody's things being bricked. You just have to hard reboot your console. We just have to hard reboot your console. It's not breaking anybody's systems. It's just a glitch.
We're not trying to fix it. Wait, who said anything about fixing the score?
A fresh development has emerged in the ongoing drama over Captain Marvel's Rotten Tomatoes page, with the site now offering an explanation for why a number of user ratings was implausibly high on the day of release before experiencing a sudden drop. To recap, in the weeks leading up to the Carol Danvers solo debut, the film's Rotten Tomato page saw an influx of negative takes in an effort to bomb the movie's want-to-see score. Last week, however, the site put a stop to this when they began allowing user comments only for films that had been released, a measure they described as noise reduction. Of course, only when the movie came out in theaters again, the trolls were free to resume the campaign. Note, the news article in the Garbage Tier News internet website, they knew that was going to happen. Why don't the people who are making high salary managing movies for the MCU or Disney realize this was going to happen? Were the people at Rotten Tomatoes. Now, Rotten Tomatoes does do a lot to impact how films perform. I think the studios are more afraid of it than they should be. But it's true. So what do you want the story to be about? Do you want the story to be about your movie or about your movie requiring a major internet site to censor its content?
Yeah. By the way, there's lots of times where I've gone and seen movies because the score was so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have identified a bug.
Holmes and
Watson. That was a great choice. We have identified a bug in the post-release functionality for the movies that have been released into the theater since our project update last week. How convenient that the two things are connected. The quantity of user ratings, which is displayed directly below the audience score and is intended to only include quantity of users who have left a rating or written reviews after a movie's release, had included both pre-release and post-release fan voting.
She's wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt. I remember that band.
Nine Inch Nails, they were a good band, right? Bobby's World, it was a good show.
It was a good show. You kids don't remember. It was a good show.
Good show.
Kids these days.
Kids these days. And our friends at Midnight's Edge, who are in the audience, got a little hit job when they were doing a live stream review of the movie by a Estonian copyright organization. Now, I'm not going to spoil their thunder in talking about it in too much detail because I'm sure they're going to talk about it in more detail. But a live stream, which was just people talking on a black background, if you could pull up that image there, your video has been taken down. A claimant sent us a legal notice about the copyright content in your video. As a result, your video has been removed from YouTube. And this is done by the Estonian Organization for Copyright Protection. Andre, who is basically the boss of bosses over at Midnight's Edge, was just about to get into his spoiler thoughts about the movie on Thursday, the day where in the United States the movie was going to be rolling out. And somehow the Estonian Copyright Organization decided that they were going to put a strike on there. So, does this pattern of behavior suggest to you that Disney and Marvel was confident in this movie going forward?
No. And I think that's
And
why
he-
they were also playing up the kind of the feminist edge and trying to get her to say
Yeah.
things and having Samuel L. Smith, what the fuck? Samuel L. Jackson saying something stupid right before the
Wait, Samuel Sith? That sounds like a great idea for a Disney movie, having Mace Windu come back as a Sith.
Actually, I was thinking like L. Neil Smith for some reason. I don't know why. Anyways, so I'm sure they were pushing that angle up to try to turn this into a Ghostbuster situation.
I don't know if there's a Ghostbuster situation, but for anybody who doesn't listen to Midnight's Edge, who will be listening to this in the future, go check out their channel because they're going to be going into a little bit of detail about this. But of course, people out there have been supportive of the agenda that's going on.
Mhm.
For example, Captain Marvel will inspire women's studies in academic papers.
Yeah. By the way, before we jumped right into this, so we've showed clips on videos, and we're trying to stray away from that because we keep getting hit with copyright claims, which all they do is just say, "Hey, you can't monetize your video." Not that we're monetizable anyway yet.
Yeah, but they actually laid a copyright strike. We've never had that problem.
Yeah. Well, our copyright strikes, quote unquote, aren't actually strikes. They're just saying like, "Hey, this is a content ID match. There's going to be ads playing along with your video, and you're not going to get a penny from any kind of advertising from those advertisements," which we don't anyway yet.
And they cut us out.
Yeah.
But this was a little bit more serious. And at some point, the Midnight's Edge folks are going to talk a little bit more about this in detail.
Okay.
But let's talk about how Captain Marvel is going to be a revolution in the women's studies academic field.
By the way, I would just like to quote from a very famous philosopher who once said, "How the fuck did I fail women's studies? I love bitches."
Exactly.
Yes.
So, Captain Marvel writer Kelly Sue DeConnick, who created the first of many recent reboots that was the major inspiration for the current version of the character that was made in the movie, claiming that the newly released Captain Marvel starring Brie Larson will inspire women's studies in academic papers. Now, you may not know this because you don't seem like the type of person, Jim, who'd be reading women's studies, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer, by noted feminist Joss Whedon, who would never use his position as a feminist male to abusively get sexual relationships from younger females who viewed him as an authority figure, inspired wave after wave of feminist studies papers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. DeConnick was the writer that Marvel Comics tapped to transform Miss Marvel into Captain Marvel in 2012. DeConnick begins the interview with the Hollywood Reporter, lamenting the idea that women haven't had heroes to look up to until recently. We're really good at cross-identifying because we've had to be. I don't think I viscerally understood what I didn't have until I had it. The women and girls watch Harry Potter. They're not like, I'm Hermione. Maybe a couple of people are, you're identifying with Harry because he's the hero. I seem to remember, Sarah Connor, Charlie Baltimore, Ripley.
all kinds of female protagonists.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how we have to remember the past differently to justify our current actions.
Mm-hmm.
I guess she didn't remember Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, Xena Warrior Princess. So some of these things that just keep happening over and over again. Oh, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Catherine Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, the girls from Charmed, Samantha Carter from Stargate SG-1. She would continue, none of us have trouble seeing ourselves reflected in white men because we've always been told that is the default.
Deep Space
That the default
Nine.
human being, and you can cross-identify, and because of that, we've always centered the pain and their comfort. That's basic humanity. That's how we've been taught to do it. No. When we see an authentic culture reflecting back at us, we realize that heroism is not exclusively the domain of masculinity, that there's nothing inherently masculine about power or sacrifice or the power fantasy or about the sci-fi aesthetic or about the ethical ideas of superheroes. Now, I want you to kind of put this in your think box for when we get to the review. This is the person whose intellectual ethos created the idea of Captain Marvel that came into the movie that we're going to be talking about. DeConnick is then asked about what surprised or shocked her about Captain Marvel. She points into a scene towards the end of the movie. The scene towards the end, I think there's going to be women's studies and academics papers written about that scene. There will be, because most of those people are vapid intellectuals.
Was that the scene where the cat was hawking up a Tesseract? Was that?
No, that's not the
scene
scene she's talking
okay.
about. I have a lot of opinions
I would like to see
about
the
it.
women's studies paper on that. I would read that one though.
I have a lot of opinions about it, and I think it's bold as hell and sorely needed, and that there's something that's missing from the film that I also think it's crazy progressive, but I'm afraid identifying either one of those things would be a spoiler. And I'm going to try to talk about those things in a way that's not a spoiler when we get to the actual review itself.
I really don't care about spoilers for this movie. I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Off the top of my head, now the article does point to what she's talking about. Off the top of my head, it might be the fact that she doesn't capture Jude Law's young Rog. Instead, after defeating him, she puts him in a spaceship and sends him back to the Kree homeworld of Hollow with a message that she plans on ending the supreme intelligence.
Are you trying to send me back into the deep again?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I just have a little OCD with my hands sometimes.
Okay. We got to get you a proper quiet fidget.
Yeah. In that case, it's nothing new. Superheroes are always sending messages to the villains about how they're going to stop their plans. In fact, at the end of Batman v Superman, Batman performs a similar action with Lex Luthor. Instead of branding him, Batman tells Luthor he's transferring him to Arkham, where his friends are expecting him there. While Luthor had been detained, Batman still isn't above sending him a message. So the crazy progressive feminist message is having feminist characters do what other superheroes do. We're going to talk a little bit more, but I don't want to go into all that. But this is what some of the people who are kind of hip deep in the ethos of feminism are saying about this movie. We also have the editor of the Daily Beast calling people who don't like this movie incels. So take that, you incels. Take that. Watch this movie about Brie Larson, a great Academy Award-winning actress. So, on Twitter, the Daily Beast put its post up, said, the first female-led Marvel superhero movie, which it's kind of pedantic, but not true, has been targeted by the men's rights activists and the incels, the Gamergate crowd, since the very beginning. Within Leon's piece, she claims that people are up in arms about Marvel superhero films have been misinterpreting Brie Larson's quotes about white men and have been using them to launch an all-out digital assault on the actress in the film, writing in the same style of harassment internet campaigns that have targeted women and minorities in video games, comics, and geek-branded film franchises like Star Wars and Ghostbusters. Reactionary trolls have burped up. You know, it's kind of cool how that ties in with a cat vomiting up the Tesseract. A deluge of content targeting Larson and Captain Marvel in recent weeks. Most of it claimed to be outrage over the notion that Larson hates white men, which is what someone might take from the following out-of-context quote by Larson if it were laid through a 30-person game of telephone in which everyone has cotton balls stuffed in their mouth and is also mostly deaf. Now, what Brie Larson said is, I don't hate white men, and I want everybody to be clear about this, that I don't hate white men, but there's not too many white men in film reviewing. Now, the underlying idea isn't bad, but the fact that she had to say, I don't hate you, but it makes people think, well, wait, she obviously hates me.
Mm-hmm. I'm not racist, but...
I'm not racist, and I have lots of black friends, but...
I think they actually call it the racist butt.
The racist butt?
Yeah. Like, I think I saw some comic where someone said, like, I'm not racist, but, and then, like, a butt with legs comes out and goes, like, hey, I'm the racist butt, you were saying?
Exactly. We also have people complaining that Captain Marvel is military propaganda.
Okay.
So, again, the audience that they're pitching... Not really. As Captain Marvel's release date approaches, the promotional tour feels increasingly weird. Celebrating Brie Life's intersectional feminism while hyping up the U.S. military, it offers a pair of dueling ideas that go together like oil and water. Joining the Air Force is so cool and feminist. That was actually a commercial that they showed before the movie.
And by the way, have these people ever had Italian dressing? It's pretty good. It does go together.
It's not unusual for Hollywood action movies to focus on the military heroes and receive direct input from the Pentagon between 9/11 and 2017. More than 800 movies and 1,100 TV shows were supported by the Department of Defense, including Iron Man and Transformers. The CIA famously handed making Zero Dark 30, encouraging the idea that torture is an effective intelligence gathering tool. Top Gun is quintessential example, though. Actually, a better example is Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. So this was actually a story about the Army Rangers, and Clint Eastwood in the studio went to them and said, hey, we want to make a movie about this thing that actually happened that's going to highlight people from your unit and their heroism. The Army said, we're going to pass. So they went to the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps said, wait a minute, you're making a free Marine recruiting movie for us? We will not only support you doing that, we will give you money to do that.
Yep, they do that. That's a thing.
That is a thing. And, of course, the Air Force kicked some money in and got their little presentation, and the people that they are targeting this movie towards think it's bad that we're featuring the military. And noted critic of Gamergate and other incels, Brianna Wu, says that she calls for government legislation in response to internet trolls attacking Captain Marvel.
Oh no, why did I not have this link pulled up already?
I actually had a Twitter, so let me pass the link to you in the doobly-doo.
Okay.
We are professionals. We're totally professionals here.
Oh no. Here we go.
Here we go.
Got it.
U.S. congressional candidate Brianna Wu, who's a figure in the anti-Gamergate movement, says government has a role to play in the fight against internet trolls, a stance inspired in part by the backlash against Marvel Studios' female-led Captain Marvel. It's a kind of familiar story at this point, right? We were here with Ghostbusters. It seemed like any time a woman steps forward, tries to put her toe in the water of a male-dominated field, we're right back here. It's so frustrating. Wu said on Bloomberg Technology, saying the controversy around Paul Feig's terrible all-female Ghostbusters reboot.
By the way, I just want to mention, I remember when Wonder Woman came out, how like all of the men's were just clowning on it and saying this is going to be a terrible... Wait, no, and that never happened. Never mind.
Yep, that never happened. It's weird how the incels all liked Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And they don't like this. It's almost like the incels may have taste. May have taste. Asked by host Emily Chang if social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, I almost said Twitter, are doing enough to curb trolls and harassment. Amid a shift towards policy, Wu said absolutely believes it's a gendering issue and adds it affects men too, for sure. When asked if legislation is needed to better introduce better control for online hostilities, Wu answered, I think that there's certainly a role for Washington for us to address what women face both in the tech industry and what users face on the other side. Something we've seen is really big promises from Facebook, from Twitter, from Reddit, from all these companies that are going to address the situation. For me, looking in 2019, it's very hard for me to point to one thing that has concretely changed for women in the tech industry, so I think Washington has a role to play. So what do you think, Jim? Do you think the government has a role to play in protecting people's feelings about terrible multi-billion-dollar corporate entertainment industry appealing to their narcissistic desires?
Yes, and I think we should have snipers outside of all these trolls' houses. Oh, wait.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Brianna Wu claimed that Gamergaters told her that they were going to have snipers on her, and that claim later turned out to not be true.
Oh, it wasn't true? Oh,
no.
Oh, no.
So we have people who've made false police reports saying that people whose opinions are different from them should be banned by the government. And again, this is the target audience that the MCU and Disney has been pitching this film toward. So, Jim, do you think that Disney should be trying to sell movies to people who need the government to make it a safe space for those movies to exist without people saying they're terrible?
Should they make these movies? Well, I'm sure there's an audience for them. So if there's an audience for them, people will give them money.
So are you saying that what do you think about Sniper Brianna Wu's thoughts that there should be a final solution to the troll problem on the internet?
Rev up those ovens, I guess. I'm so
Actually, when I was watching Captain Marvel, when we were watching Captain Marvel, they were talking about a woke and progressive cooking brand for ovens and refrigerators. So that kind of was a little connection here. Now, the Hollywood Reporter, though, is asking some important questions about this fake feminism being promoted in our popular genre entertainment. Why are Marvel's powerful women in the past? That's an important question. If feminism is here today as part of hashtag current year, why couldn't Brie Larson premiere as a strong, effective character in the modern time frame after Avengers Endgame?
Maybe because the 90s weren't so nice to women as they are today. And if you're going to be preaching a message, you need to fit it in with reality. And it's hard to have that reality in modernity. Maybe. Just saying.
So in other words, you're saying that you need people to overcome obstacles to have obstacles?
I think there needs to be obstacles. Yeah. Because I think today most people look at strong women and go, that's fine. Whereas the 90s, they may have been like, eh.
But didn't you listen to Brianna? She said that people hate strong women. And didn't you listen to all those people saying that the incels hate?
Yeah, I forgot I was supposed to hate.
Or do you think maybe these ideas are all lies that are being promoted to sell products like terrible Adidas sneakers?
Sounds like you really hate women's when you say that. I'm just saying.
See, when I grew up, we had this little thing called cyberpunk. One of the most popular cyberpunk things we all saw was a little movie called RoboCop, and we talked about what would happen when a big corporation took over a city like Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Now the big corporations are taking over through the internet and entertainment media, and I'm very disappointed. This was not the dystopia I was promised.
Yeah,
I was promised weird gangs with punk insignia and the Japanese cultural trait.
I was hoping for more of a Blade Runner thing, so I could have
so you could have you sentient waifu bot.
Yeah.
The responses for these, but what started as a half-formed comment about the odd circumstances that both Agent Carter and Captain Marvel, two of the three existing Marvel cinematic projects that centered around a solo female lead, Netflix series Jessica Jones being a third, were set in the past, became something else of a realization that, accidentally or otherwise, the MCU has a strange history of sidelining strong female characters. Or maybe they're not strong female characters. If another example is needed, consider that Black Widow, arguably the most capable of all characters in the MCUs with the exception of Nick Fury, or Fury as he's called to his friends, is only now getting a solo project after playing second fiddle for most of the decade. And yes, it'll be set in the past as well. So, do you think that's weird?
Do I think what's going on in Hollywood is weird? Absolutely not. Of course I do.
Yeah.
Everything that happens in Hollywood is weird.
But we're going to actually feature a Gizmodo article in a positive light. Gizmodo. Forget strong female characters. We need complicated female characters who screw up a lot. Every few months, like clockwork, it happens again. The never-ending debate over strong female characters. At this point, it's become a cliche and an in-joke and a t-shirt and a comic. And still, we debate endlessly what it means for women to be strong in our media stories, especially science fiction and fantasy stories, and whether this kind of strength is a good thing. Most recently, this excellent piece by Kelly Herson at The Outline talks about the idea of women's agency and whether it's always a reliable yardstick of whether a story is feminist. I'm going to just hit a pause button there. The answer to that question is no, it's not. It's not always a sign of that at all. I've touched on this topic a bunch in the past, including in this piece for IO9, but lately, I've been thinking that what I really want is not strong female and trans non-binary characters, but rather complicated characters. I want characters of all possible genders who have complicated emotional lives, characters who make mistakes and screw up and hurt people and learn from their disasters.
You mean like realistic things?
Actually, real characters. They don't want Mary Sue's.
Oh.
So, do you think we should not have Mary Sue characters in our popular media?
They all need to be. No, they all need to be Mary Sue's because they need to respect women's.
Yeah. But I think it's possible that the people who have been pushing the agenda of these strong and brave characters who are going to be selling us Adidas sneakers are slowly starting to realize that this is a cliche and overused thing.
Yeah.
Well,
By the way, I don't exactly like it when they do it with the men's either. I mean, most of the great movies that you kind of go through, all of the great movies that I can think of, in fact, I can't think of any other ones. Usually there's, at the very beginning of a movie, there's a low point for the protagonist. It's kind of like it's almost a formula where
it's almost like there's a big circle, little path that the protagonist goes around, and one of those is where he hits a low point.
Yeah.
A little guy named Joseph Campbell might have told you about it. So yeah. So that's the opener. We're gonna do a couple little reviews, and then we're gonna get into the main event here because Captain Marvel has become a cultural flashpoint in our current culture war. So we're gonna talk first about Russian Doll, a great series on.
I'm gonna let you talk about that. I'm gonna step out for a second.
A great series on Netflix. It's kind of like Happy Death Day to you. However, it's featuring a older Jewish spinster woman who has a life as a intellectual who goes about his business and goes about her business and, drugs and parties and has a good time. And then she dies and she comes back. It's a very interesting show because it gets into a lot of esoteric aspects of Kabbalah and the soul and time and decision-making and agency. But as the show goes on, there's a parallel. There's a second person, and these two people missed each other at the key point of the night, and they both died, and they both were caught on this eternal cycle of recurrence. And they both have a lot of toxic, horrible relationships in their life, and they have to work through them and solve them, and eventually do what they're supposed to do. Stop the other person from dying. Because there is an old saying in Jewish teaching, when you save a life, you are saving the entire world. So the show...
Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. We're made through it. And it's really cool because they have an apartment which is based in an old yeshiva. She goes to talk to a rabbi to try to figure out the whole mystical side of it. She has a terribly destructive relationship with an ex-boyfriend, and she's afraid of commitment because her mother was crazy. And there's a cat also. Cats are a common linking item here.
Does it hawk up a tesseract?
It does not hawk up a tesseract, but the cat pops out of existence briefly.
Okay, well then I'm not interested. Unless it has a vomiting cat, I'm not interested.
And, it vomits the cat. And she gets her hair cut by a homeless person to help her learn that, the hair represents the person you were. And it's a fun little show. It's not for everybody, but apparently it's doing gangbuster business on Netflix.
Okay.
So the second season of
hold on. Before we get into that, I want to very, very briefly talk about a show that I watched, and I'm gonna put up an appropriate image. The Orville was a great show. I just got through the first season. I was really surprised. I usually hate Seth MacFarlane, but holy shit, this is great.
Seth MacFarlane gave you a show you didn't know you wanted.
Yeah, I didn't know I wanted, and boy, I'm glad I got it. And I got it good and hard. Yeah. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. But I thought the image was much appropriate for this review. And, I don't know if I'm seeing it just yet, but there you go.
And once you catch up on season 2, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about in season 1. And
I'm probably gonna dust through it. If I get a night off this weekend, I'll do it because I have a lot of stuff to do tonight. So, yep. Okay.
So, Dragon Prince season 2 came out. It was by the third guy in the Avatar: The Trilogy of Creators, and the first season was like, oh, I see what you're kind of doing. You're kind of not really good at it, but okay, yeah, sure. Well, I finished watching it, and I watched the second season because I thought you might have figured out what to do in the first season, but no, they didn't. So it's taken a literal week for the first season to happen and a literal week for the second season to happen. And they just got to the end of the human territories and they finally are facing dragons. So, hey, show up for season 3 to see dragons. No. No. No.
Oh.
You're not going to bait and switch me like that. You're not going to bait and switch me. Netflix.
But you don't like the animes?
I do, but this just kind of... It fell short of what it could have been.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Deathstalker. A little movie called Deathstalker where things happened.
This is the first in our new series, and Amazon will play anything.
Yeah. So Deathstalker was reviewed by the good friends at Red Letter Media, Mike and Jay. They've actually gone through the whole Deathstalker trilogy. So Deathstalker is a movie about a warrior barbarian guy.
Really having to think about what happened in this movie, didn't you?
Well, no, like he was a warrior and he finds ogres who are about to rape a girl, and then he about to have sex with her, but then a wizard got involved and said, "Hey, you have to talk to the king who's living in a shack." And the king says, "Hey, you need to go fight an evil wizard and get the magic wizard stuff. But you have to go talk to a witch to get the stuff to fight the wizard." So he goes to the witch and has to fight off a henchman of the wizard who may be the wizard. And then he has to go meet a goblin in the cave and fight a monster in the cave so he can take the goblin out of the cave. The goblin can become a human. And then he goes on the road and he finds some people and he fights and has sex with some people. And then he has sex with some other people. And then there's a tournament. And then there's fighting and sexing. And then he destroys all the magic items to free people from the tyranny and oppression of magic. And that's Deathstalker.
It doesn't even show them getting freed. He just waves the two items in the air, and then that's it.
Look. There's glowing magic, okay?
Okay.
And there's glowing magic, okay?
I was surprised you discerned some sort of plot out of this. I knew that he was going somewhere to fight in a tournament, and that was it.
It's not so much like a plot, it's like a walking simulator game. Where you know, they're just walking, and as they're walking, things happen around them.
Yeah.
What was your take on Deathstalker?
It was things happening, the movie. It was just a series of things that happened, and rape.
Yeah.
It's like this movie came up to me and said, "I only know 3 words. That's fighting, happening, and rape." Tonight, you.
So Deathstalker is free on Amazon Prime. You don't have to pay extra for it. Like a really obscure Neil Breen movie, you gotta pay extra for that.
Yeah.
But Deathstalker is free. So we've decided to kind of focus our bad movie reviews on free movies that are on Amazon Prime because I think that's where the comedy gold is to be mined.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to play this very quick little segment to kind of illustrate my point.
And Amazon will release anything.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get through some of the movies that they showed on there, including Pickle Pickin', which is an actual thing.
It's an actual movie that somebody made about pickles.
About picking pickles.
Picking pickles. So, Jim, are you ready to get higher, faster, whatever? Is your body ready for
dude, I bought PF flyers as a kid. My body is definitely ready.
So Captain Marvel is a giant mess of a movie. And the MCU movies have done a good job taking people who were TV directors, who are indie movie directors, who are up-and-coming people, and getting them involved in starting in the action genre. And they would sometimes bring in people to help them do the action shots and do things like that. Like the guys who did John Wick helped out with some of the Captain America movie stuff. And then they did so well that they made their own movie. So when it comes to the Captain Marvel movie, we look at what happened here, and we're seeing a breakdown of the formula. We're seeing the Marvel model that's been repeated so often and has been done with such cold, relentless efficiency, not starting to happen, getting lazily done. And this movie was being sold to us as the future of the MCU. Now,
From what I hear, it's more like the past of the MCU. It's definitely like a phase one.
That's a common thing, and a lot of the phase one movies are confusing and awkward. But when they went into phase two and did origin story movies, they, peppered in some interesting colors, some schemes, bringing in some interesting ideas. They did something to engage with it. So, listen, a superhero origin movie is pretty basic. It's a pretty quick, easy formula. So, the fact that they didn't really engage anything interesting in an effective way with Captain Marvel makes me worry about the future when we start to talk about, hey, let's have the gay Marvel movie. And hey, let's have the Chinese Marvel movie. And hey, why don't we have a Mexican Marvel movie? And hey, what other race of person are we going to give a head pat movie to? Hey, let's introduce Miss Marvel. She's Pakistani. We could sell that in Pakistan, and with a little fudging, we could sell that in India too. So the movie, in complete and total disrespect to the 90s setting, is very cynical in how it's selling stuff. Now, that's not something I can blame on the filmmakers. That is directly on the feet of production and Disney. They didn't understand and didn't really have a movie to sell, so they pulled these tricks out of the bag of less successful movies to sell Captain Marvel. So, Captain Marvel is based on a common female idea of empowerment. Women are oppressed by men, and by men they're told that they need to be in control, they need to be orderly, they need to keep their emotions in check. Back in old-timey, weird 19th and early 20th century medicine, people used to say women would be hysterical because of a disorder in their vagina. And that's when the first marital aids were made to help a woman keep control of herself by fixing her vagina. So Captain Marvel is pulling out of that notion and setting the beginning of the character's emotional arc there. And the ending of the arc is where she defeats all the enemies because she is engaged with her emotional self and her rational self. Her strength and her heart are both as one, and she beats everybody. So if you're doing that kind of arc in a story, Jim, what needs to happen in the beginning?
A low point?
No. So in the beginning, the protagonist, the protagonist, if you will, has to have their emotions constrained, and they have to either be successful but at a cost, or having trouble being successful as their true self is clawing at the outside, clawing from the inside, trying to get out.
It's
clawing. Clawing like a cat that eats Tesseract.
Oh.
Trying to get out.
I thought I was going to say crawling in my skin, but that works too, I guess.
That also works. So, in the beginning of the movie, Carol Danvers is not part of the stoic warrior race of the Kree, except when she is later. But she's rebelling against the Order, and she's the protege of the top elite special forces commander of the Kree. And there's no consequence for that. We don't see any tension or interaction with her fellow Kree soldiers because of that. That adds, characterization or depth or anything interesting to the plot point. Especially when there is a Kree female soldier there who may actually be completely invested in the alternate mode of being because she is a Kree. We don't see any of that. We don't see her struggling at all to speak of throughout the entire movie. But she eventually breaks free and says, finally, I get to unleash my full power level. And then she beats up all the bad guys. That's the emotional arc of the whole story. And that's part of why the movie doesn't work emotionally. You've seen enough stuff to know that she starts the movie with amnesia. In the comic books, her amnesia is kind of complicated and esoteric to explain, but her powers and her personality and her soul got stolen by Rogue from the X-Men. They got stolen by Rogue from the X-Men because Chris Claremont, who became a god in the X-Men and is the definitive go-to, this is the high watermark for X-Men storytelling, wanted to bring Captain Marvel into the X-Men universe because he got his career start with her. And she had kind of fallen out of favor with the Marvel brass. There was Avengers 200 where she had a rapist's baby that grew into a rapist who mind-controlled her into marrying her and took her off to an alternate dimension, and all of her friends were totally okay with that. So Chris Claremont kind of wanted to salvage the character, and part of that involved her losing her entire soul and having it be absorbed by Rogue. Oh, by the way, spoilers for a 30 to 40-year-old comic book story. If you haven't read that, I can't control that. So that amnesia also couples with an original characterization point of old Miss Marvel, that she had a bad case of imposter syndrome. She got her powers from Marvel. We're going to talk more about that a little later. And she felt like she was an imposter that was aping him. Part of why she dressed as a sexy lady, eventually, was to showcase her coming into her own power and being a different person. Her original costume was kind of aping his. So they put the amnesia arc in the movie because it's a thing everybody knows about this character who knows about this character. So they're going to say, hey, that thing in the movie, like that thing in the comic book that I know. I'm going to clap because I see a thing I know on the movie. The problem with that is that we're supposed to be emotionally grounded.
Totally get that reference.
I know, right? We're supposed to be emotionally grounded in the performance of Brie Larson. But Brie Larson's not emotionally grounded in the performance because she doesn't know who her character is, because the character doesn't know who she is. But she says, I need to kind of try to be snarky and on brand for a Marvel movie protagonist. But, again, the element of amnesia, in addition to being Chris Claremont's way to try to fix the character, connected to her inherent sense that she had imposter syndrome. This iteration of the character is, I'm a strong woman, I'm bold, I'm forward-thinking, and I'm righteous in belief that I am right. That is a different emotional character beat. So having amnesia in there, while it's a cool little throwback to, hey, that's a thing I know, doesn't make any sense. But even if you wanted to have the amnesia story, you could have taken the flashback scenes, made a interesting opening part in Act 1, where we actually get to see Carol grow up as a girl, become a top military test pilot, and then wake up as Vers, the Kree. Then we would have a sense of emotional grounding in the character. As the character wakes up confused about who she is, we know who she is, and then we become emotionally invested in her quest to become who she is. Which is the entire emotional character arc for this movie. And that's amazing that the lead scriptwriter also created that garbage fire Tomb Raider movie. She was the lead scriptwriter on that.
I disagree. I thought it was entertaining.
Well, I mean, it got 51 on Rotten Tomatoes with critics and fans. Basically, it was mid-grade.
Yeah. I'm not saying it was anything great. I just didn't see any movies last year.
I'm being very critical of this movie, but it's very much in that same strike zone. So I think the wrong writer was brought in here, but they brought her in there because Captain Marvel is a strong woman, so we need to have lots of women in the creative team because look at how well that worked for Black Panther. So that's a production decision problem. So we have direction, production, and script writing. Those are the trifecta of where this movie kind of falls apart. So she gets captured, like a Mary Sue does, accidentally. The bad guy, sucker punches her, and she gets captured. And she is, again, shackled. Bondage is a recurring visual metaphor theme throughout the whole thing. But she breaks out of her shackles partially, not completely, and uses those shackles to beat on her oppressors until she eventually busts the shackles off. which is, again, supposed to connect to this broader emotional paintbrush that they're using for the movie, but they're not doing it right. And so she comes to Earth and she does a little bit of a buddy cop spy thing with Nick Fury. And that's one of the areas where the movie starts to work.
Okay.
Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson have good chemistry together. And if Brie Larson actually had a character for most of those sequences, I think we could have had something really good in the movie. But she didn't have a real character, and she did the best she could.
So it didn't turn into Cop Out.
It did not turn into Cop Out, no.
That's good.
No. I mean, I would rather turn into Cop Out and having her playing the Tracy Morgan role. That would have been funny, but no. No, that was not what we got in that situation. So they went through parts of LA that still look like they do in the 90s. Things haven't really changed. I think it was El Segundo area is what I heard somebody else say. That basically nothing's really changed that area since the 90s. There's some stuff I'm going to get into more when I'm in the more spoiler appropriate space for that.
Well, let's do that next week.
Well,
Do a spoiler. Because I'll have seen the movie.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And we'll warn everybody on the way out, like, hey, we're getting into spoilers. There's nothing else after this. So
okay. But there's going to be some things that I'm going to discuss in a little bit after I kind of take us along here for the progression with some things that aren't really spoilers in a minute. But, you know, she goes through the whole thing, and she, again, only is foiled by the plot when the plot requires her to not be successful in order for things to happen. And a common thing that occurs in Mary Sue movies is all the other characters have to act out of character and stupid for that character to have a moment to be successful. And this movie is made by a studio that's not confident in its message. And the movie's internal storytelling is not confident in the story it's trying to tell. It's entertaining, but it's not confident. So, the Kree-Skrull War is something I wanted to talk about. It's not really a spoiler, because what I'm going to be talking about again is in the comics. It's, you know, Marvel comics from the 60s to 90s. So if you haven't read, 30-plus-year-old comic books, this is a spoiler for you. So the Kree are basically space Nazis. They are xenophobes, they're genetic supremacists, but they're genetic supremacists because they've hit a genetic dead end. Their race is no longer genetically advancing. I know that's not how genetics work, but that was an interesting story for guys like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The Skrulls were, because they're shape-changing lizard people, they came out of the whole pod people, invasion of the body snatcher sort of things, but they have a monarchy because you need a hot green chick who's a queen of a space empire. And that goes without saying. And those two races fought for millions upon millions of years, which is incredibly stupid when you think about it for more than a few minutes, but pulp and science fiction novels have written incredibly stupid things like this in the past. So the Skrulls were originally an enlightened, peaceful race, and they tried to help the Kree out to get advanced. And the Kree were a primitive species, and they were competing with another primitive species on their planet to get uplifted by the Kree. So they were both taken to Earth's moon. They were told to do something wondrous. So the sentient plant people made a spot on the moon which had oxygen, and you could breathe, and it had water, which becomes significant to the Inhumans that the Kree end up later creating and end up occupying that territory. The Kree take the weapons from the Skrulls, murder them, take their ship back to their home planet. The scientists figure it out, develop the technology, and then they start invading Skrull territory. In this movie, the Kree are portrayed as good guy space empire. But they're actually bad guy space empire. We know this because we saw Guardians of the Galaxy. But at no point in the movie do the characters engage in the we think we're good, but we're actually bad sort of actions. Until the protagonist is no longer around them. Which is, again, weak and inconfident in their storytelling. The Skrulls are the baddie aliens, but in the end, it's like, oh, we're not really bad, we're just misunderstood. And the movie is adapting something and simplifying something from the comic book, but they're simplifying it in a way that takes away good storytelling. A good storytelling of two space empires that have a war that's gone around generations. Both of them have done horribly terrible things, and they're both fighting their sphere of influences and their proxy battles on Earth. Isn't that a more interesting story, Jim?
Yeah.
That's a problem. Now, the Skrulls, I think, are important to this movie because in the comics, one of the several important things about the Skrulls is their homeworld got ate by a little guy known as Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, who Marvel Comics got back during the Fox merger in full. So, now that we have the Skrulls set up in the movie, and that we know that the Skrulls are refugees, then we have to go back to why they're refugees. Oh, hey, we're doing this Fantastic Four movie and the Silver Surfer movie with a little guy known as Galactus. So, hey, if you saw the Captain Marvel movie and you're going to see that later Fantastic Four movie, you're going to feel extra smart. But it's like, oh, yeah, that's why the Skrulls are refugees. I totally think that's what's going to happen, and I think that's part of why Marvel management was pushing this movie so hard as an important part of the future direction of the series. I'm afraid that Kevin Feige and management at the MCU are getting too insular in their perspective on the movies, and they think we've been successful for 10 years doing this. We can be more esoteric and more obscure. And I don't think that's a good idea. Marvel teased the Inhumans, but there's also the Eternals, which connects to Thanos, and Marvel, the original Captain Marvel from the comics, hooks up with a Eternal chick and has a son who becomes Captain Marvel at some point in time in the future. So they introduce the potential with the Eternals coming into play that they can have another son of Captain Marvel that they sort of shoehorn in an awkward way. And if we're doing a spoiler-ridden thing later after you see the movie, I'll get into more detail about that then. But Marvel is a character in the movie. This doesn't really spoil the details of that so much. But Carol Danvers' mentor, when she was Carol Danvers before the Kree took her, was a character named Wendy Lawson. That was a gender flip of another character in the series. And that the Supreme Intelligence is appearing to her, and Supreme Intelligence is their AI dictator that's made of all the minds of all the dead Kree. That the Supreme Intelligence wears that form of. So when we're going to talk about this in the spoilers, that's going to be an important problem I have with the movie as a whole. Going into the spoiler details. So do you have any questions about any of these things we've talked about with the weird little comic intersections, or talking about how the emotional and storytelling arcs of this didn't work?
No, I think I got it. I think
Okay. So do you want me to save you the problem of having to wait till the end sequences so you don't pee your pants?
No, I'm a big boy. I can handle my liquids.
You can hold your extra large soda pop?
Yeah. Yes, I can. That is really inside baseball.
That is really inside.
No, I did not pee myself. That's what I'm wondering. No, like I always have this thing that anytime I go see a movie, like I'll be drinking stuff before I go see it, and then like I'll go and watch it, and by the end of the movie, I'm like shaking my leg, like, oh, come on, hurry up, end sequence, hurry up, and then I have to see like this long tome of all the people who were involved in special effects in order to get to the very last ending sequence, and by then I'm just like, I can't take it anymore. I just want to get out of here. But I usually tough it out. I think unless it's something like Venom where I genuinely don't care about the end sequence, I just hold it. I'm a good boy.
So the other thing I want to say is there's two different schools of thoughts in the reviews. Some people
Voltaire's here. I think we have to start from the very beginning. I'll dig all this stuff back out. Sorry everyone.
So there's some people who saw the reviews think that Brie Larson was very good playing the robotic and stoic half of the character. I'm the sort of person that when she actually had emotional grounding, she actually felt like Brie Larson was like unencumbered as an actress. So I'll looking forward to seeing what you think about that. It's a movie you don't need to see for the broader MCU meta plot to make any sense. It's a prequel to pretty much every movie. It's like, hey, you remember the Tesseract? You ever wonder what happened to it after Howard Stark picked it up in 1945 in the Arctic ice? No, you didn't think about that. Well, too bad. We're going to tell you in this movie. Oh, hey, you remember this other thing? You ever wonder how that other thing happened? No? Well, too bad. We're going to tell you in this movie. Oh, the 90s setting. That's something we can talk about without spoiling.
Okay.
The 90s setting only exists because they have to put this movie in the past, because putting it in the present or the near past would make the plot lines too confusing. But there's not really anything in the 90s that is appreciably improves the story. It's like, hey, remember Blockbuster Video?
I remember Nine Inch Nails.
Hey, remember Radio Shack? Hey, remember Payphones? Hey, remember True Lies with Jamie Lee Curtis and Arnold Schwarzenegger? Hey, remember blah de blah? Hey, remember having Street Fighter 2 video games in a bar? Hey, remember Guns N' Roses?
You know what? I mean, there's ways of doing that effectively. I think The Wedding Singer is a good example of that.
Yeah.
And which is sad that I have to dig out a fucking Adam Sandler film.
Yeah.
to remind people of how something was done correctly as opposed to incorrectly.
Hey, remember how Windows 95 used to take time to play a CD? Hey, remember Alta Vista? Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Hey, remember internet cafes?
And then take something like Adam Sandler when he did The Wedding Singer, when she was like, "Now can you take off my my Van Halen shirt before you curse the band and they break up?" That's a fun little joke that works. It also brings up some nostalgia. That's something that's done right.
And it grounds the characters in the time frame.
Yes.
Now, Carol Danvers wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt when she doesn't remember who she is, and Nine Inch Nails wouldn't make any sense to her. And, oh, by the way, you were a rocker girl, but you don't remember you were a rocker girl or even know what any of that means. So it's really cheap. It's really cheap, and it doesn't really do anything appreciable for the movie. And you talked about how, there was more sexism in the 90s. They they have sexism in the movie, but it's pretty much only in flashbacks. There is a line about, hey, you'd look prettier if you smile more, which makes me think that all those incels who are talking about that on the internet may be secret incels that are working for Disney social media shills, because I don't think that was something that they added into the movie at the back end. Would me telling you what the Stanley cameo is bother you?
Yes, that would bother me.
Okay, so I'm not going to tell you about that, but I'm going to tell you about something very good. There's a special memory tribute to Stan Lee, which is amazing, and there's a special cameo for Stan Lee. Unfortunately,
is it on par with Into the Spider-Verse?
No. However, it's more amusing from a movie perspective.
Okay.
And Stan Lee and Phil Coulson were both de-aged with CGI, and they both didn't look good with the de-aging. But Nick Fury looked pretty good for most of the sequences, though there are certain points where I think parts of his face weren't right with the CGI. But I was imagining it.
What's wrong with your face?
So when you see Agent Coulson's face, you'll understand what I'm saying about, no, that doesn't look good at all. Oh, no. The guy who plays the lead Skrull is great, entertaining. Jude Law is completely wasted in this movie. He does what he can, but they don't actually use him for anything, so why did you get Jude Law? I understand why they get Jude Law. We'll talk about that after you see the movie, and we can go into more full spoiler detail. But why did you waste Jude Law on this? Why did you waste Annette Bening on this if you don't give her anything interesting to do? And they have characters. One of the characters is Minerva. Another one is Atlas from the Kree Special Forces team. Those characters all have significance in the broader spectrum of the mythos of Captain Marvel. But they're just there. They're just people to be there and have one awkward conversation with and 2 dumb fight scenes. So this was really bad in a perspective of making other interesting characters, interesting. There's a lot of talk also about the female friendship sequence. It works in flipping the switch from amnesia alien chick to I'm woman, hear me roar. It's kind of a little overacted in parts, but it kind of works because of how uneven the whole movie is. But that's one of the heartbeats of the movie that really works, and I just wonder why nobody said, why don't we not have this script full of stuff that doesn't work? Why don't we just rebuild the script around the things that work? Why are we taking things that people remember about the character from the comics back when the comic was slightly more popular than it is now? And it wasn't very popular then, but now it's only selling around 15,000 copies, which means maybe 6,000 or 7,000 copies are actually going to people. And why are we making a movie about a 6,000 or 7,000 selling comic book character? I don't know. But Marvel has an idea that they need a female face of the brand. And all their other more popular female characters are mostly associated with the Avengers, mostly associated with the Fantastic, mostly associated with X-Men. While Captain Marvel has been on the Avengers, while she has been affiliated with the X-Men, she's not strongly connected to those teams. She's not really part of iconic stories related to those teams. She's just kind of there. So if you're going to make an independent branded character, that makes the most sense. So it makes sense from a business standpoint, but neither the MCU or the comics has been able to stick the landing. And at least so far as this movie was, Brie Larson didn't really stick the landing either. But it wasn't her fault. It was just a really bad script. Direction looked like a TV show. Half the lighting and color palette was like a DC movie, like a bad DC movie, before they realized in Wonder Woman that, hey, these movies should be fun and people should enjoy them. It was a mess. It was a giant mess.
All right. God damn it! There was a question I wanted to ask, and I just forgot it. Damn it.
What kind of a question was it?
Oh, okay. So, in terms, so that's your review then.
That's a review, but I can add some other stuff. Oh,
Right. But
talking about lack of confidence. Actually, let me go back to a moment. I want to talk about how Disney doesn't have confidence in the movie. The other Captain Marvel has a movie coming.
Mm-hmm.
For legal reasons, DC has to call him Shazam.
Yeah.
They're releasing the embargo on reviews a month in advance.
Nice. And people
That's
say-
a sign you're confident in your movie. We're releasing embargo on next to the almost last possible moment we can release it. And we're having the review sites clamp down on trolls and incels. It's not a sign you're confident in your movie.
No. Anytime I hear review embargoes, I'm like, oh no.
I mean, you have to have a certain amount of review embargoes, but Shazam is a confident movie by a studio that believes that product is the right direction for their future.
Yeah, and I think they kind of need to, considering how bad DC films have been.
Yeah, but I mean, Shazam is a great character. It's about a teenage boy who's so good and pure, he gets to have awesome, badass powers that are basically Superman's. So basically Superman's, as a matter of fact, the original creator of the comic sued DC Comics, won, but in the process went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And then DC said, oh, hey, you have a nice catalog of characters here. We'll just buy that off you in the bankruptcy sale. And that gets into some interesting things about the two characters, because DC doesn't use it for a while until Marvel says, hey, DC used to have a character named Captain Marvel. I mean, Captain Marvel is kind of a vague enough name that we could just name our character Captain Marvel, because we're Marvel, he's the captain. And his alien name will be Mar-Vel. That's completely different. And he has different powers. I mean, yes, at one point in time, we're going to have him trade bodies with somebody. But I mean, it's totally different. They issued a settlement where they both had the right to own the name Marvel, but DC couldn't publish the comic book as Captain Marvel. They had to publish it as Shazam, even though the character would be called Captain Marvel. And then when DC did their big New 52 reboot, they're like, well, let's just call him Shazam. And we're just going to call him Shazam so we don't have to deal with any of that nonsense.
Sounds good.
And, yeah.
So, it seems as though a lot of the people that I've seen,
I've noticed you've watched some other reviews to kind of fill your brain with what other people are seeing in this movie.
Yeah, and it seems as though that's what you said is a common theme throughout the whole thing. That it's not absolutely terrible, but it does feel like a first. What do they call them? The first wave.
A Phase 1 Marvel movie.
Phase 1 Marvel movie, and it really kind of goes beat by beat of pretty much every other of the
But
movies.
here's where that's kind of
interesting about it, and the 90s.
But here's where that's kind of different. Okay. So Robert Downey Jr. is a very charismatic actor. Mm-hmm. Chris Evans is very charismatic, though Captain America, the first Avengers, you didn't really see the charisma in that. Chris Hemsworth is very charismatic, but you didn't really see that so much in Thor 1. But Thor 1 is like, hey, what if the gods are real, but they're super advanced space aliens? That brings you in with an interesting idea. Mm-hmm. Captain America was Nazis with super advanced magic space alien technology. That brings you into the whole thing. And then there's Avengers, hey, what if we get all our toys together on the bed and mash them together to make that into a movie? That's the whole thing about a Phase 1 movie. So while it's a weak origin story like the Phase 1 movies, where they made it up was on the intangible. And Brie Larson isn't really an extrovert with her charisma. I actually know people who have known her who are official professionals in the industry who I have talked to on condition of pseudo-anonymity. And they said, she's a really nice person, but she's not like an extroverted person like a Robert Downey Jr. or a Chris Hemsworth. So while she's a good actress, and I think under a good director, she may have done a better job playing the character of Captain Marvel, and I think we'll see that in Avengers Endgame. I think casting a more extroverted, charismatic actress as the character might have changed how people perceived the janky movie. Like Benedict Cumberbatch. So Doctor Strange is a giant acid trip. And it's fun when it's a giant acid trip, but when it becomes a Marvel movie, like, come on, we're doing this weird magic acid trip thing over there. I want to get back to that. That's fun and interesting. Mm-hmm. There were two elements of Black Panther that were really interesting. It's like, hey, we have this Afrofuturist kingdom that's kind of weird and cool and interesting to look at. And hey, there's this giant geopolitical story. But wait, we have to tie it into the broader Marvel Cinematic Movie plot. And Ant-Man is like, hey, what if we have a thief with magical shrinking powers who's got to steal stuff? Oh no, we got to connect it to these other movies. And that's a recurring problem I'm seeing in the Marvel movies, that an Iron Man, an Avengers, they could be movies on their own standpoint. The first movie we saw this on was Age of Ultron, where all the connective tissue of other things that have to happen aren't really being woven in effectively.
Yeah. Well,
unless it's a Guardians...
I mean, I have issues with the Hulk movie, but how they tied it in with the rest of the movies was really simple. It was just a little quick end credit scene where he was like, where Iron Man was like, hey, I got a business card for you.
Actually, they had some other stuff they alluded to in there. There's a implication that they couldn't actually do, but it's like an inside baseball thing where it looks like Bruce Banner was talking to Reed Richards about some things in one of his like private DM chat things in Edward Norton's Hall. It's a little interesting thing that they slipped in there. Because while Marvel couldn't do it for their movies proper, technically that movie was a Universal movie production. Yeah. So Universal was kind of cheating because they were dirty cheaters.
But
Well-
anyways, the most of the reviews kind of echoed the same thing. It wasn't really fun or interesting. It's not terrible either. And I started to
It's
like,
entertaining.
well, what were the shills saying? You know, the normal shills, you know, the collider types, and a lot of them.
How great it is that we have a strong female protagonist taking on the status quo.
But that's not what they were saying. They were saying
No?
the same thing.
Yeah, they were saying it was kind of
Yeah, and still waiting for John. What is it, John Campia? He is like the biggest shill of all, and you can totally tell that dude's being paid off.
Though a couple of times he flips the script. Like, while he's a huge shill for Disney and Star Wars, he also personally knows Mark Hamill. Like, he was best friend with Mark Hamill's son, I think, growing up. So there are moments where John Campia breaks out of that shill space. There's some things now that we're gonna actually do like a special spoiler thing next episode, so all you guys will come back for that. There's certain things that I wanted to talk about now that I have to wait for that. But something else I could talk about that's not a spoiler. In the comics, the Tesseract was a thing called a cosmic cube, which is completely unconnected to the Infinity Stones. Which was basically, what if the beings that made the universe left some energy aside to make basically your own god? That an advanced civilization could just make a god. And they teach it how to exist. And that's called the cosmic cube. So the Skrulls made one, and it forced their society backwards intellectually. And the Kree said to their Supreme Intelligence, hey, make us one of these. And the Supreme Intelligence said, yeah, I'm not going to make that on my own planet. Are you kidding me? I don't want my empire to be disrupted by that. Let's go to this garbage people planet called Earth and have them make one. And that led to a lot of the plotting and machinations with the Kree-Skrull War being brought into things. It led to stuff with Hulk and with the Fantastic Four. And it led to a little thing called Secret Wars, where all the Marvel Comics characters got transported to planet by a being called the Beyonder, who was an imperfect cosmic cube entity being. So the fact that you have the cosmic cube being part of the Kree-Skrull War again, but it's not an actual thing, it's just like an Easter egg, it's kind of weird. Kind of just a weird little thing. Also, the soundtrack. We talked about the soundtrack earlier. Mm-hmm. None of the soundtrack songs actually added anything to the scenes. You know, there's like a Salt and Pepper song for a driving thing, but it wasn't really part of a fun, peppy dancing thing for like Don't Chasing Waterfalls. It wasn't there. I'm Just a Girl was there in a fight scene. I'm pretty sure I've seen that in a movie somewhere before, but it didn't really add to the fight scene. None of the 90s music added to anything. So not only was the 90s setting not helpful, the 90s music wasn't helpful. Which is, again, a production problem, or then maybe a direction problem if the director said, hey, I want this music put in here during editing. And a lot of stuff feels like it's an old TV show in how they shot it. Which is weird to me.
Which is a bummer, because I do like watching all of the Marvel movies, and I'm not particularly looking forward to seeing this one because of the kind of mediocre things. But so long as it's not Dark World, I think I can trudge through it. I think I'll be
also
okay.
The cat is an extremely charismatic cat.
Oh,
although
Tom
from Midnight's Edge After Dark, he says he thinks that there's only actually 2 scenes with the actual cat. So he doesn't know why there were actually 5 cats hired to play the cat in this movie. I mean, unless, it's a cat, it's like, well, we can't film the scene, the cat's like, not wanting to cooperate. Get the other cat. He doesn't want to cooperate either. Get the other cat. He's busy eating.
Have you ever?
How about the other cat?
Have you ever tried to wait for a cat to hawk up a hairball, especially short hair? That could take a while. Maybe have 5 cats ready to go, 5 different sets.
That could be also,
yeah.
But most of the movie, the cat was CGI.
Okay.
And not just the sequences where the cat had to be CGI. And when you see them, you'll know what I mean by the cat had to be CGI. So that's my review of Captain Marvel. It was a fun mess, but it was a mess. I rate it somewhere between a 5.5 and a 6.5 out of 10. Like a C minus. That's almost a D plus. But at least, they're not malicious. This isn't like a Ryan Johnson, I want to wreck everything because I can kind of movie.
So it's not going to subvert my expectations, is what you're saying.
No. All your expectations are going to be pretty much there. Everything you've seen in the trailers, you're going to see in the movie. Everything you expect to see because of what you've seen in the trailers, you're going to see in the movie.
Okay.
Something else I want to mention. So this is supposed to be your big feminist, awesome movie. They showed the only really feminist movie they showed in the trailers beforehand was a movie from Amazon, where Mindy Kaling plays a young, hip person of color who writes for a old, not hip British talk show host lady, and helps reinvigorate her show and help it be relevant to the teens and millennials. That was the only movie that was trying to appeal to that niche. Everything else was major blockbusters. Talked about the Elton John movie that's coming out. I'm going to probably pass on that unless, as more stuff comes out, it looks like a giant dumpster fire. They also had Frozen 2. I didn't like Frozen 1. I have no idea what they're going to make it into a Frozen 2. That doesn't make any sense in the world to me.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing to continue that movie on.
Maybe they can try to explain how that she can create life.
I don't think they're going to do that.
They're not going to do that.
No,
I mean that was a major thing that I was like, wait a minute. Oh, she can create life. Wait, hold on. Go back. Go back. No. Go back. No. I don't care about it singing. I want to know why it's living. Can we go back to this? No, we're not. We're just gonna leave that. Okay, we're just gonna leave that hanging. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They talked about Hobbs and Shaw, which the movie looks dumber than hell. It looks like it's going to be a fun, entertaining movie, but it looks dumb. I mean, but then it's a Fast and the Furious movie. Those movies all look dumber than hell. And they are. But some of them are actually fun.
But they're supposed to be dumb.
Yeah, they're supposed to be dumb.
It's supposed to be dumb and fun.
Yeah. So that's another element to this. The advertising in the trailers doesn't even believe that this is like a big cultural watershed moment for feminism.
It's not. Honestly, I think Alita probably would have been a better pick for them to fight for.
Yeah, but they don't like that because she has a boyfriend and she's motivated by her love for her boyfriend and her love for her father.
Right, but the
whole normal human emotions that people understand.
But the whole thing was supposed to be a giant stab at the whole "Born Sexy Yesterday" trope. It was a giant stab in the back.
It was, but they wanted to have her be, tough and strong and not needing no man.
But she didn't need no man.
But she wanted him anyway. And she was willing to give him her heart. Remember?
Yeah. But,
so, the movie's doing well with the Chinaman, so Captain Marvel will make a profit.
Okay.
And the reason we're not getting the Black Widow movie is your franchise woman movie. Because Black Widow is hosted by Scarlett Johansson, who is an A- to A-rate actor. And if you're going to have her be the face of the franchise, she's going to get a pay bump.
Yeah.
And they're not going to pay for that. And the lady who plays Scarlet Witch, well, look, you're going to have a romance story with Vision on our new TV streaming service show. So unfortunately, we can't have you star in a movie because we need you to help prop up our streaming service. And allegedly, the rumors is that she's kind of unhappy that Brie Larson's going to be the girl face of the franchise. She's like, I was here. I have a compelling character. You guys haven't really given me anything to do in any of these movies. I could be that person.
No. Go away. Know your place, woman.
That's right. We need real women. A blonde-haired woman who's whiter.
Yeah, we need an Aryan woman. Just saying. Oh, wait. Oh, no.
Oh, that's another element, actually. That reminded me of something. So, in Kree society, the Kree are, genetic xenophobe, space Nazis. But they have racial minorities because they've tried experiments to, fix their genetic problem. So, their lead race, their dominant race, are blue Kree. But Marvel is a pink Kree, and they're like the minorities on the Kree world, and they're kind of oppressed. But, they do have pink Kree eventually rising to positions of power because, it's run by a computer, and a computer can't be racially bigoted all the time. It has to, say, well, you're good at what you're doing. So on the, Star Force squad they have, it's led by a pink Kree, with his right-hand person being a blue Kree, but his protege being another pink Kree, and we don't see anything about that in the movie. We don't see any of that dynamic, which is, again, a bizarre and baffling choice, because I think it would add to the movie. Especially when, Captain Marvel comes to Earth, and she makes new friends with a black guy, and he helps her get her groove back, and then she finds her black friend, and she really gets her groove back. That kind of would, bit of parallelism and the symbolism of the movie, would be some good storytelling, not something a hack would do, which is what we got in this movie.
No. Oh, no. All right.
So
You're really selling me on this movie.
I mean, it's not as terrible as all this sounds.
But it's terrible.
If you liked all the other Marvel movies, you're going to have a good time here.
Okay.
It's not going to be like Thor Ragnarok. It's not going to be like Doctor Strange. It's not going to be like Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's not going to be like the original Avengers movie or Infinity War. But, you're going to have a good time. Well, I mean, not a good time. You're going to be entertained.
Okay.
You're going to be entertained.
Okay.
And that is ultimately why we're our heroes. So, this wraps up this edition of Recording in Progress. So, everybody who's listening, and who may be listening after we're done broadcasting, there's going to be a second half, a spoiler-filled episode of Recording in Progress. Maybe even, if Jim and I have time, like an impromptu live stream. Whenever Jim actually sees it, that might be fun, so we can really get the spoilery goodness out.
Yeah. By the way, we also need to dig around and find us a new Amazon film to watch.
Well, there's Deathstalker 2.
Oh.
We have to see how things kept happening.
All right, so Deathstalker 2.
I mean, come on.
God,
it's free on Amazon Prime, Jim. They'll put anything on Amazon Prime.
And they'll put anything on Amazon Prime. By the way, what was some of the movies that I had on that list? We could go through all of those ones.
Let me look here. So we got
into it right now.
Guy Scraper.
And Amazon will release anything.
Born into the Mafia. Space Tours Mission EVA. Some movie with a chick standing sexily against a gun that's actual logo's hard to read because
Shotgun.
Yeah.
It says Shotgun. The movie is called Shotgun.
The Drive-In, Powder Burn, Circus Island, Pickle Pickin', Bigfoot Horror Camp, and Monsters of the UFO.
I think Circus Island might be interesting.
Oh, we'll check that out. But I definitely think we need to keep going with Deathstalker, just like Deathstalker kept going and having things happen to him. That's the spirit of Deathstalker.
Oh, Born into Mafia. That's a Vitaly Versace movie.
Yeah.
Partners.
Yeah. That could be a good movie.
All right, we might have to look into that one. All right, so we'll wrap this up. You can follow us on the
when do you think you'll actually see Captain Marvel?
I'm scheduled to work Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
So maybe a Tuesday or something?
That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be working on those days. It just means that I'm scheduled to work those days. You see how that works?
So when you see it, I think it might be best to actually do an impromptu, special little record scratch of, okay, Jim saw this now, so we can really get into the finer, spoilier details.
Yeah.
So that's another experimental episode of Recording in Progress. We're going to stop the recording, and we can all progress away.
All right. Worms.
So, yeah.